The year was 1944, and the Italian countryside was a battleground. I was a young British soldier, part of the Allied forces pushing northward, determined to drive the Germans out of Italy. The sun was just beginning to rise over the rolling hills and vineyards as we prepared for another day of fighting. We had been on the move for weeks, advancing through villages and towns, each one bearing the scars of war. The locals, weary and wary, watched us with a mix of hope and fear. They had suffered under the occupation and were desperate for liberation, but they also knew that more fighting meant more destruction. Our orders that day were to take a small town nestled in the hills, a strategic point that the Germans had fortified heavily. As we approached, the sound of artillery and machine gun fire grew louder. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of gunpowder. The enemy was dug in, and they were not going to give up without a fight. The terrain was challenging. The hills provided natural cover for the German defenders, and we had to move carefully, using the landscape to our advantage. We advanced in small squads, each man aware of the danger that lay ahead. As we crested a hill, the town came into view, a cluster of stone buildings with narrow streets, perfect for ambushes. Our first encounter with the enemy was brutal. A German machine gun nest opened fire, pinning us down. Bullets whizzed past, hitting the ground around us. We took cover behind a stone wall, returning fire and trying to find a way to flank their position. I remember the adrenaline, the fear, and the focus. In moments like that, training took over, and we moved with precision and purpose. One of our squads managed to outflank the machine gun nest, taking it out with grenades. With the immediate threat neutralized, we moved forward, inching our way into the town. The fighting was close and intense, house to house, street by street. We had to be cautious, checking every corner, every doorway, for enemy soldiers. I will never forget the sight of a German soldier emerging from a building, weapon raised. We locked eyes for a split second, and in that moment, I saw a mixture of fear and determination. He was just like me, a young man caught up in a war that neither of us wanted. We fired almost simultaneously, and he went down. I paused for a moment, the reality of war hitting me hard, but there was no time to dwell on it. We had to keep moving. As we pushed deeper into the town, we encountered more resistance. The Germans had set up defensive positions, and every inch of ground was contested. We used whatever cover we could find, moving from building to building, clearing out the enemy. The sounds of battle were deafening, the crack of rifles, the boom of grenades, the shouts of commands and cries of the wounded. By afternoon, we had taken most of the town. The German forces were retreating, leaving behind a trail of destruction. We regrouped, tending to the wounded and consolidating our positions. The town was ours, but the cost had been high. Many of our comrades lay injured or dead, a stark reminder of the price of war. The locals began to emerge from their hiding places, cautiously approaching us. Their faces were a mix of relief and sorrow. They thanked us, offering what little food and water they had. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. Despite the devastation around us, there was a sense of hope. We had liberated another piece of Italy, and with each victory, we were one step closer to ending the war. As night fell, we set up camp on the outskirts of the town. The sounds of battle had faded, replaced by the quiet murmur of soldiers talking and the occasional crackle of the radio. We were exhausted but determined. The road ahead was long, and there would be many more battles to fight, but we knew we were making a difference. Lying in my tent, I thought about the day's events. The faces of the enemy soldiers, the townspeople, and my comrades filled my mind. War was brutal and unforgiving, but it also brought out a sense of camaraderie and purpose. We were fighting for a better future, for a world free from tyranny. The Italian campaign was far from over, but that night, in that small town, we had achieved something important. We had struck a blow against the enemy and brought a glimmer of hope to those who had suffered for so long. As I closed my eyes, I knew that the next day would bring new challenges, but we would face them together, as brothers in arms.